lighting. If you didn't get your badge yet and you want to get CEU credit and you want to go to the presentations, just when you have a chance and you've gotten your badge, just come back and get scanned or send us an email and we'll make sure to do it. We apparently are having a bit of a problem with the printers upstairs. But we want to make sure everybody gets their credit.
So we'll try and time the question. So if there's anything, we might try and push some questions to a close if we don't need to get. That's okay.
Oh, sure.
I'm gonna try this thing out, which I haven't. What is that? It's like a presenter timer, like you can set the intervals. We'll see if that works.
Speaking of like LED, modern stuff, technological advancements, you guys see the video on the net of like 12-year-old kids who were given That's like I was just talking about before. Like my dad is that dinosaur guy. Like I don't need this. Oh yeah. Get the building lead certified with light switches, conventional switching. Go ahead. You get it. You want using conventional bulbs too?
You do.
Why don't we just hit the trifecta and use metal halide at 250?
I'm going to introduce you guys. Yes. You know what? Here's what I did. I put it in the font that I could read and filled up a page and I cut off the rest. And then I'm going to take off and go back to my booth just because things are so busy upstairs. You can handle the question and answers.
Are there mics? Do they bring mics out?
I don't know. It's a small enough room. Why are there people waiting to come in? Just come in. Filling up women. God, you're right. They're really filling up here. Yeah, but I'm sure that a lot of people are stuck in line and not willing to give up their space in line. We have politics. We don't know what happened. I have a theory.
Well, it's like first day in the morning, everything is
You should be able to print your badge at home and just grab it badge. So you know you have an hour and a half because it's a panel discussion. Francesca, you know you have till 11:30. It's a panel discussion. Yes. You're like the one I worry about the least. Of all the speakers, you're like the most responsible person I've ever met.
dependable, right?
Responsible. Dependable is so like dull. Responsible. talented. I was telling somebody there was a comment about Natalia and I was like, it was really sad when Francesca left, but they have no well. It was really sad in the well. They have their talented. And I wish everybody the best. As soon as I don't see like a clump outside, I'll get started. You know, I'll start with the introduction.
Plastic gooseneck everywhere.
Oh, did we lose the speaker? Did we lose the speaker? Oh, that's not good. No falling off the stage. No nerves. Everybody have their bathroom break already. Everybody have their water. Okay.
No, it's quite the opposite. I'm the only guy. It feels special.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to LEDucation 11. I'm Wendy Kaplan with Felix Lighting. I'm one of the committee people. A little bit of housekeeping. We understand that there is a bit of a problem upstairs with getting badges. We completely apologize. Apparently, there was a problem getting the printers on site. If you want to get credits, when you do get your badge, just come back and have them scan you or send us an email and just tell us which session you attended. And thank you very much. There's 2 halls upstairs. Please make sure you see both of them. And definitely come to my booth. I'm over in 313 in the main hall. So welcome to a lighting designer, electrician, electrical contractor, and an integrator walk onto a job site. I'd like to introduce our speakers. First is Francesca Bastianini. Her experience covers residential projects of all scales. Do you want to stand up, Francesca? Oh. So they know who Francesca is? Hi. She's also the vice president of the DLF New York, which is the sponsor of this event. Her experience covers residential projects of all scales, boutique, retail spaces, as well as larger scale academic institutional buildings. Prior to starting Site Studios with Alex, she spent 6 years at Lumen Architecture, collaborating with architects and interior designers, including LTL Architects, MR Architecture and Decor, Andrew Kukowski, architect, and Foster and Partners. Francesca is an adjunct faculty member in the Lighting Design Master's Program at Parsons, the New School for Design, teaching graduate lighting studio and professional practice. She teaches lighting design in the Interior Design Department at Pratt Institute, and she holds a Master of Fine Arts in Architectural Lighting Design from Parsons, a Master's in Psychology from Lesley University. Really? That's my niece's alma mater. And a Bachelor of Arts in Theater and Psychology from Smith College. She's amazing. Thanks. Alexandra, or Alex Pappas-Kalber. Before teaming up with Francesca to form Site Studio, Alex spent several years at Linnea Tillett Lighting Design Associates, designing lighting for public spaces, urban landscapes, and infrastructure with renowned architects and landscape architects, including Diller Scafidio and Renfro, Michael Van Valkenburg Associates, and Maya Lin. Alex teaches Graduate Lighting Studio 1 for lighting architecture and interior students at Parsons, the New School for Design in New York City. She has been a guest lecturer and invited critic at Columbia University's Graduate School of Architecture and Planning and at the University of Virginia Department of Architecture. She holds a Master of Fine Arts in Architectural Lighting Design from Parsons and a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Theater Design and Technology from the University of Miami. On our panel, we have Caroline Harrison from Top Shelf Electric Corporation. Caroline holds a bachelor degree in interior architecture from the George Washington University. As a lighting designer, she spent her first years designing retail flagship clothing stores across Europe and Asia. She moved on to work on hospitality, hotel, and private residence projects before joining Top Shelf Electric Corporation, which is an electrical contracting firm specializing in residential, high-rise, mixed-use, and commercial construction. As a project manager, she works closely with the developers to procure the lighting package and coordinates installation details and delivery schedules with the field. Whitney Wertz, raise your hand. Whitney manages One Button's lighting integration for Lutron systems, including Radio Raw and Homeworks. Her interest in smart home technology and her background as a lighting buyer and interior design assistant led her to pursue a more technical design role in the industry. Dave Zatz, guess which one he is on the team, is with Lion Electric. Dave is a fourth-generation licensed electrical contractor. He possesses a master electrical licenses that span New Jersey, New York City, and Florida. And Dave always says that this business is his birthright and views the trade as more than just work or another job. So thank you all very much. I'm sure it's going to be a great presentation. And again, if you have any questions, just speak to somebody with an orange shirt or find me at my booth or Craig at the ETC booth. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
I guess,
Start with a little of our housekeeping for AIA credit, just to give you guys the necessary mandatory slides, understanding the credits that are required. You want to go forward? That's us. Course description, and you can go learning objectives. And that's us.
that's them.
That's them.
We've
done some of the
Wendy did some good bio reading, which you can read more about. But let's get started because we're starting a little bit late.
Yes.
So very quickly, we wanted to put this panel together because as lighting designers, we've noticed sort of over and over again that there's a disconnect between the design part of projects and the implementation part of projects, that we often deliver our documentation, our CDs, our bid documents, and then we kind of step back for a while. And the folks to our right are left to kind of piece together the puzzle to implement a working project. We talk a lot about collaboration and how we want to work together with teams, but it usually is in reference to architects, landscape architects, clients. We very rarely, as lighting designers, include the builders in those conversations. And so we wanted to take this opportunity to get the entire team into the room, to ask them some questions, learn from them, learn how we can better service them, communicate with them, all of that, to mitigate the inevitable conflicts that seem to come up on a lot of our jobs during construction. And so we can all kind of get in, get the job done successfully, make the most money, and with the least flicker possible, right?
Yes. So this is particularly true as we talk about trying to have that bridge between the design side and the construction side, that CA meeting that we would all love to have and always gets edited out for it being too much fee or not really necessary, or the client doesn't understand why it's needed. This is sort of an opportunity to have that conversation, and so we're inviting you into that conversation. We'll go through questions with the panel and then open it up for questions and answers at the end.
So, first question, and I'll point this to Caroline, I think, if you're ready.
Sure.
What information do you typically receive about the lighting design before you get to a job or upon arriving at a job site?
Does this
It should.
I guess it depends on when you're talking about it. Are you talking about when the construction team gets to the site, or are you talking about when we were awarded the electrical contract? Because if you're talking about when we were awarded the electrical contract, typically we'll have a one-line diagram, the plans, obviously, cut sheets in the schedule, but oftentimes we will start right away as getting involved, our project engineers getting involved, designing the details and everything. What we don't have are those details to make sure that when we go into coordination meetings that we have all the details we need to make sure that your precious fixtures fit in the ceiling. So that's kind of, the details are what are missing, but usually the one-line diagram, cut sheets, plans, control, riser schedule,
So it sounds like what we're missing are the details, and can you elaborate a little bit more on what kinds of details you're looking for?
Well, I feel like the number one thing that my men, when they go into coordination meetings, talk about is when you're starting to put in all the plumbing and everything like that, if you don't have, and it sounds very simple, but just including the height of the housing on the schedule, because you might not have all the other details, just putting that one thing on there when you're going to coordination meeting, instead of flipping through 250 pages of lighting cut sheets, you just put that on the schedule. When they go in and they're talking to the plumber, the engineer, the architect, all at the same time, if you're able to just put that in there, and when they're trying to figure out where they're putting their pipes, then that saves a ton of time.
So it's not just the type of information included in the entire package, but where it's included?
Exactly, where it's included is very important.
Okay.
So the schedule, the fixture schedule is really your sort of Bible for the project.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
Dave or Whitney, thoughts on this question?
I just, to be perfectly honest, I think she hit the nail right on the head. It's, a lot of people go in, you know, it's a light in the ceiling, but behind that, there's about 4 or 5 different parties to coordinate that light being there. And most of the time, most people will, what I see in this business is a lot of the time is that's not my job problem syndrome. You know, I spec'd it, I drew it, I gave the one-line diagram, I put my input on the controls, and in a lot of times, the last man on the totem pole has to organize and make everything fit. And a lot of the times, you know, if you have a contractor who's got an integration or an automation department built in, great, you're 5 miles ahead of the game. But if you have a guy who is not privy on, you know, LED technology, control technology, on, you know, dimming technology, and he doesn't want to invest in it, then the whole project suffers. And, you know, like you said, we want to make the most money as possible, so we want to get in, get out, and get done, right? So I think a lot of the times, I wish we had a lot more coordination between, you know, the design people and the actual people hammering away and putting the stuff in. And we just don't. And I wish we could change that. I'd like to change that, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Oh, no, you have to be optimistic.
that's the whole point of this. Better practices.
It's not, you know, it's not the design guy's fault. It's not the,
Yeah.
I think it's more the state of the business today. It's that the owners or the developers want to get something done ASAP. It's like, we don't have time, just get it done. What do you mean, just get it done? You have to have the conversation to get it done, right?
And to that, I'd say that's where we come in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one button, we asked for very detailed information about all of the different light fixtures. We want to see that the lighting designer has made a choice on the driver type, and that we can follow up with the spec sheet and make sure that that was actually what was selected or ordered. So our role is to kind of check all the compatibility and make sure that, you know, the right wire types are being pulled, and we have all the correct interfaces, and that the electricians are really on board with what needs to happen to make the system work properly. So, and as far as what we need from a lighting designer, just like a very detailed, very clear RCP, spec sheets, and if any changes are made, then we need to keep abreast of all those updates as it goes along. So, and that filters down to the installers.
And do you guys ever go, I mean, what's the process of like going back to the lighting designer to request that information? How often does that happen directly? Or is it always
Every
through-
time.
Every time?
Yeah, I mean, we get pretty good spec packages, especially from partners that we've worked with in the past. They know what we're looking for. I also, if nothing has been handed over to me from the start, then I reach out with what I need, just very clear what I need in the schedule, what I need from the spec sheets. You know, with that, we usually get good results, but oftentimes there are still remaining decisions to be made on maybe driver types, and we do help with that, contacting manufacturers and seeing what kind of results have been seen with these fixtures on certain control systems. So there's a back and forth with the lighting designer or the architects, whoever is kind of taking over that portion of the project at the time. But yeah, it's an open dialogue from the beginning for us, and we'd rather be super clear and give way too much information than have something come up later in the game. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I feel like I can write a million RFIs to the construction manager, and then he'll send them off to the architect, who will then send them on to the lighting designer. And then if there's like a third party, because sometimes as an electrical contractor, the developers like don't know when they want to bid on the lighting package. So it might be bid one before we even get the electrical contract. Sometimes you'll be on the third floor of the building framing, and then they're like, oh, we're gonna start like bidding on this. So it's really frustrating because you don't know how many jumps you have to get through to get the answer. Because sometimes we're able to buy the packages and we win those bids. Other times it's straight from a distributor. You don't know if it's from the GC that's buying it from a distributor, the GC buying it from the owner, from us, the electrical contractor. So what happens a lot of times, I feel like, is if there's one more step added and I have to go to the distributor that I never even had a relationship with, then back to and make these like circles just to get the answer, I usually get about 50% of the answers, and that's part of the problem is there's like a circle going on and no one wants to really own it at the end. So you have to kind of make those decisions in the field sometimes.
It sounds like there's a lot of education that needs to happen with our clients as well.
Yes.
Is what I'm hearing, is that it's not just a kind of missing piece between our teams, but that the owner really needs to understand why it's important for certain channels to be in place. What conversations do you wish you could have with a lighting designer at the point that construction starts? Is there any, we've sort of touched on this, but is there anything else that you would add to that? Dave, do you want to take that?
I probably want to have a really detailed conversation on controls.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think LED is just, 12, 24 volts DC. It's got a little driver in it, turn it on, turn it off. And yay, it works, it turns on and off. But then a lot of times, like, can we talk about dimming? Well, what kind of dimming? Leading edge, trailing edge, triac, MLV, magnetic, ELV. You have a million different types of dimming styles that most times are specific to a manufacturer. And, we talked a little bit before about, we did a house out in Great Neck that was 43,000 square feet. And it's a good thing someone had the idea to ask, do I need to run low voltage wire for dimming controls for these coffer lights? I was like, you've got like 2 days to get them in because they're going to close the drywall. Well, thanks for telling me. Well, thanks for asking me. I think even a lot of people on my side of the game who, take pride in doing electrical work and staying relevant in the field, because I think this specific area of lighting, LED, lighting controls, I think is probably on the bleeding edge along with advancements, like in lockstep with the medical field. I think the advancements in the medical field and this field, there's new stuff coming out every day. Every day something comes out. And even I'm like, wow, man, I can't keep up. So I wish that we could have a detailed discussion about lighting controls and what you require, like, what you were speaking about earlier. It's really simple to, drag a piece of 12-2 or 10-2 armored cable, hook it up to the driver. But then there's a whole complete and separate infrastructure behind that in order to control that light. And I haven't heard, and I'm usually the one initiating the conversation with, a lighting designer. And again, to kind of default back to the owner, it's, hey, what are we doing for lighting control here? I don't know, the owner hasn't made a decision yet.
I mean, that's a decision you definitely have to make before you start
Oh,
installing.
yeah. Oh, yeah. You'd be surprised how many times people are like, I don't know, I just want it to dim. Well, how do you want it to dim? Are you going to use a complete standalone control solution for it? What do you want to do? I don't know. We'll talk about that. Just, here's a deposit order of the lights. But what do you mean?
Well, if you work with one button, we give you one.
I love one button. I love one button.
And we walk the electrician through them. We show where we need, the 12-3BX and the extra control wire for some of these 0 to 10 loads and what have you, and type of keypad wire and how we want to loop it back.
See,
on both
that's
ends.
beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I swear to God, I wish like more people, and not just signaling, putting you guys on the spot and saying, listen, one button, I love you guys, which I do, which is cool, because you're there kind of to bridge the gap between the guy who cuts the check and the guy who puts the light in the ceiling, right? Which is really important, because I think there's too big a gap there today.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's really hard for the lighting designer to give that information unless they have a really strong knowledge base on the control side. So having the integrator to take the time and know what needs to be done on both ends.
It's
like,
huge, it's huge.
It's definitely helpful. But yeah, by the time construction starts, we just really want to make sure that all of the right specifications are actually what's being ordered. Like you said, there's sometimes a middleman or a distributor that might jump in at the last second and choose less worthy driver that just doesn't work. So we see those switches and have to troubleshoot them in the end and figure out, it just takes everyone's time, like what happened here. Turns out you didn't choose the driver that we wanted to. So just really double checking till the last, point of order that's what's going in. And it'd be helpful too if electricians could recognize like, I'm installing a 3-wire fixture, but there's only 2 here. So I don't know how we get them to that point. So there's a little more feedback and we can all work as a team to catch things. But I think it goes back to communication and education and just really explaining how these systems work and what we're looking for.
How often do the lighting designers that you guys interact with, and I also know that we don't always have a lighting designer as part of a project. How often do the lighting designers that you guys interact with know enough about controls to give you the information you need?
It's hit or miss. There's some guys who are spot on. It's like any interaction you have. It's hit or miss. I mean, you meet some people who are, only about their little niche, and all I do is design lighting, and I don't know about anything else, and that's fine. I mean, that's what you do. But then there's some people who design lighting and want to expand on that and use knowledge of controls or the infrastructure behind the lights to kind of serve their clients better. I mean, we had this discussion before. You have somebody like my dad, who's a licensed master electrician, who's up in the baby boomer generation. He's like, LEDs, that'll never catch on. All right, Dad, they'll never catch on. And meanwhile, it's, the incandescent bulb is going by the way of the dinosaur. Younger guys, the younger people, I think, lighting designers, contractors, integrators, you have to be plugged in because that's the world we live in now. You have to know a little bit about everything, really. You can't suffer from that's not my job syndrome anymore. I'm a licensed master electrician. Whoop-de-doo. If I don't do at least a minimal amount of research on controls, drivers, LEDs, I'm irrelevant. And I think that's kind of applies to, lighting designers, control people, everyone that gets involved in what we're here to talk about today would behoove themselves to just step a little bit outside their box. So when you make that interaction, right, it just bridges the gap that we're talking about from the guy who cuts the checks to the guy who puts the light in.
So I'm going to segue from that and skip ahead a few questions. For all 3 of you, have you received any specific training for new LED fixtures and controls and systems? Does your current training cover the changes in LED technology or provide a basis to understand it? Do you encourage, support staff and colleagues to get educated and trained in newer technologies?
So we probably have 20 project managers. A lot of them are master electricians at our job, at my company, and we have 700 employees almost. So I was talking to a couple of the ones that hold master electricians and license, and they have to go back for training, and we were just discussing this. And what I thought was interesting is, most of them are late 30s, like 50s, to become, because there's so many hours. Not one of the credits that they have to get, I think they have to get 8 or like 10 hours of credit a year. Not one of them it's always about safety, which is like, needs to be number one, but not once has it ever covered even like a paragraph of like the changes in lighting technology, which I feel like, you know, at a government level, maybe in order for like electricians to keep their license, maybe they should somehow, if we could push to put that in, because a lot of, you know, to have that many years, you're a little bit older and you didn't start off right now. So I feel like if we could somehow get controls or some sort of, you know, LED education put into that training that they must get every year, I think that would be really beneficial.
Events like this are very helpful. You know, LDI, light fair, things where you can go and learn more about what's happening in the market, what the new technologies are, going around, you know, talking to manufacturers, asking them how things work and what they're doing to improve them. I think just kind of expands your knowledge base and you know kind of what to look out for. So we obviously do Lutron trainings. It's the control system we primarily use, Savant as well. So Lutron has really great trainings. The ones that I've been to have had electricians and salespeople, architects, people from all walks of the industry. So if you're looking to just get a general overview on control systems, I think it's worthwhile. It's just a few days. It's down in Pennsylvania for those of you who are local. So yeah, just keeping up and when an issue arises, like researching it more. So.
The only thing I find hard though is like for us, it's like the people that are installing it. We're not going to be able to get, you know, when you're a larger company and there's so many people working on it, someone might be working on a job for 6 months and then move to another job. You know what I mean? So when it's really educating the people that are going to stay on a job through the end. And that even comes to having a lighting designer. If, for instance, the foreman is like the person to go to on any job. Don't go to the project manager, don't go to the CM. Go to the foreman. The foreman's the guy every day. He'll give you the gossip. He'll help you out. If you need to educate someone, educate him because he's working with all the fieldmen. The project manager might have like 4 50-story high-rises going up, and they're not going to get around to like helping them out. So really, talk to the foreman in the field that's there every day. Get their phone numbers, text them around 3 o'clock when they're like finishing up work because they get there really early. And that's the best time to catch up with them at the end of the day when they're like putting their stuff away, finishing up for the day. And that's when you as a designer might need to educate them a little bit, but at the end it's gonna make your job come out best because trying to get training for all these people when, you know, they're working 6 days a week on these jobs, it's hard for them to, you know, get training in. So maybe it's us educating them a little bit, unfortunately.
I'm not sure I understand.
Damn it!
What do you mean? Everybody can't get trained?
Where's Alexa? I don't like Siri.
Is that on video? They got that on video. So good.
Does anyone else feel like that?
Can't train everybody. Duh.
No, but I hear what you're saying, that it's not an inherent part of continuing education for master electricians, you know,
Or like journeymen or any of them,
contractors
you know,
or journeymen
that
or
are
anyone.
doing it.
And so, as designers, we should be taking on responsibility for educating the people who are implementing our work.
Which can be one coordination meeting, really,
Right.
you know?
Right, but pro tip, get your foreman's phone number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we?
3?
Yeah.
So what do you guys think that, what do you wish lighting designers took into consideration? So anything that feels sort of like you've said already, move past it, but what do you wish lighting designers took into consideration on the design side?
The first thing I look at when I see a project and we have predominantly LED lighting, I flip right to the architectural pages. This is, you know, after you have the paperwork signed, the project's yours, I flip right to the architectural drawings and I see how the ceiling is constructed. Because most people or most companies that produce LED lighting fixtures have the same light fixture but for 2 or 3 applications. We were doing a small boutique on 65th and Madison, and the owner decided to purchase the light fixtures direct. And the manufacturer just supplied them with regular, you know, expandable arms that you can screw into just any old stud. except that the ceiling there was built with hat channel. So guess who got left with becoming a blacksmith and an electrician at the same time? We did, which I don't mind on a smaller project where, you know, you've got maybe 50 or 100 lights. That's cool. If you're doing a project where you have 10,000 light fixtures or 5,000 light fixtures, you lose an hour. A light fixture in fabrication or altering it, 5,000 at an hour a clip is 5,000 man hours at $90 an hour, which is your average non-union labor rate in New York City today. Do the math. It's expensive pretty quick, you know? So from my side, the first thing I do is look at the architecturals. After the architecturals, I'll flip back to the back end of the E-pages, and I'll look for that one-line diagram for the controls, if there's any controls. And then what I do is I write little notes like, okay, you're using this, you're using that, you've got your one line, I don't understand this, explain this to me. And I'll try to have and reach out to whoever it is, the designer, the architect, the engineers. I'll ask as many questions. Usually when I start a job, we submit 10 RFIs before we've even stepped on a job, especially after we sign the contracts and the paperwork. It's like, here's your signed contract, here's 10 RFIs I need answered too. So I like asking a lot of questions up front. Saves a lot of headaches. But I think for me, it's definitely the type of construction or the installation is used, and I wish that that information was relayed to you guys too. You know, a lot of times you put in the lights, they work great, and then 2 hours later you get the boop, you get the blink. What's going on? My lights don't work. You wired them wrong. No, that's the thermal protect, trying to save the light fixture from burning up. So you might want to have a talk with your installation guy. You know, so those are the considerations I wish more designers took into consideration to think about really, what is this going into? How is it going to be applied physically, not, you know, electrically or controlled, just the dumbest thing possible. This is going here, and this is what's going to surround it. You know, for me.
I mean, you're a wonderful case scenario if we're working at a job together because you're asking questions. And that's not always what happens when we walk onto a job site.
I'll volunteer my end of the spectrum as probably being the #1 culprit of not asking questions. So a lot of times you're given a light fixture package or you're delivered light fixtures, and no one will open up the light fixture and go, I wonder why these came with dolly drivers. Who cares? We got to put them up. You know? Who cares? Hurry up. We got to put them up. We've got a deadline to meet. What do you do? Don't do it.
Well, I think the cut sheets are kind of vague too these days. That was one of the things that my men were saying, that it's not apparent if it's a driver, it's LED, it's like ELV or MLV, but they don't know. And when it comes to it, I feel like a lot of times they don't specify what brand. I feel like that is something I never see unless it's like a manufacturer that like they always use that specific brand. But it'd be great if there was a note that said, you know, a compatibility note that linked up, because a lot of times you're going there and when they start asking the questions, you don't even know sometimes if you get a package and it's already been bought, you still sometimes don't know what the distributor like put into that package, and you're asking these questions. You don't even know what size they are. Like when they're doing coordination, I'm like, take 2 bricks and make that like the size of it. So that gets to access panels. I feel like everyone wants to like shove them off to the side, but when you're doing these like beautiful bathrooms, I feel like there's LED tape around all those cabinets. Are you doing a hidden pocket in there? Are you putting them in a different room? Where are you going to be cutting into like some beautiful marble to put an access panel? Access panels are never discussed until it's like in the field, the framing's already up, and then they're like questioning where to put these. I feel like if there was just a general note that was explaining if you want to put it in like a linen closet, where you want to put it. It doesn't need to be specific, like 8 inches off the ground, blah, blah, blah. But like if we know in advance that we're going to have to like up our wire gauge so that we can, you know, have a longer lead back to the driver, we're happy to do that as long as we know where it is, because you don't want the electrician in the field making the decision where they're going to put an access panel, and then it's like hideous. And so I feel like that's a big consideration that no one wants to take responsibility of. So I don't know if it's an architect or a lighting designer, but I feel
no, both of your answers sort of speak to there is a lot of this, you know, it's not my job. that I know lighting designers are responsible for in terms of trying to take care of themselves in terms of liability, but also say, well, it depends on the field conditions, it depends on this, it depends. And so trying to sort of weave these two things together, like, yeah, the remote driver has to be in an isolated, well-ventilated, accessible location, but I'm not sure where that goes. So how, and at what point do we say, well, it needs to be 6 feet or 12 feet or 20 feet away?
Well, yeah, it sounds like we need to be better advocates to our architects. Like we, as lighting designers, we can go to them and say, hey, we need an access panel somewhere. Let's figure that out now in DD or CDs before it gets on the job site, rather than I think it's a lot of times we just put those 4 little letters, BYEC,
Or with like
in our
landscaping
notes
too.
column.
Yeah. Or with landscaping, a lot of times you're like, okay, obviously it's a remote driver. Do you want it outside, or do you want to like pull the wire back in interior? Like what was determined? I mean, we can find a place for it, but just let us know if you want an exterior one. Maybe you have maybe you want a ground vault, or maybe you want inside for some particular reason. But general inside outside would even be nice.
So when there's not enough control driver information, and there is not a direct channel to the designer, maybe the designer doesn't have CA scope, what do you do?
This is usually what I come across. Hey bro, there's a black one, a white one, a red one, a blue one, and then there's gray and purple. I gotta run low voltage to this, right? That's literally what I get all the time. Like, yeah, the gray and the purple is usually 0 to 10 volt dimming. Yes, you need something in addition to something extra. A lot of times, and I mean, we've hit this already like 4 or 5 times. I wish the cut sheets didn't just have a little one line coming out of the driver that said 0 to 10 volt dimming control, and that's it. Good luck. You figure out the rest. And that's where one button comes in.
Well, do you often find that you get sort of shortened cuts packages where the manufacturers do make information available, but designers don't include it? And would you rather it be included?
I think the problem is this. I think that they give you just enough information for you to get the thing up, and then not to finish wiring it. I just, like, you got me like the 20, if we're running a marathon, you've got me 26 miles. You're gonna leave me stranded at the point 2? Really? Just give me the information necessary, just to finish the job. It's almost done.
Yeah, by the time a fixture is being put into the ceiling is probably closed, so you probably wanted to run that extra wire by then.
Yeah.
And to your point, yes, we get spec sheets that are the manufacturer spec sheets. They're still incomplete. The manufacturer may not dig into driver options, and so that's where we definitely go back either to the manufacturer or usually first the lighting designer and say, hey, did you have a driver in mind for this? Because I need that information to come from you so that I know what you're going to purchase. Check if it works. Sorry, if it doesn't, let's look for something more like a Lutron 2-wire driver. But also that probably involves me going to the manufacturer and asking them, what have you seen with this control system? What works, what doesn't? What kind of range can we expect? Back to you guys, what kind of range do you expect? And just make sure that expectations are managed. So.
Do you do any of your own compatibility testing?
We do. We definitely do. If it's a main fixture throughout the house that hasn't been tested and really, 0.1% dimming is important in some, bedrooms or bathrooms, entertaining areas. Yes, we do have in-house testing, and we'll provide those results and then let you make the decision. So,
Do either of you?
Not really. I mean, by the time we get it, it's already been decided and paid for either by us or by somebody else, and it's. I wish like more guys, including my shop, had the the ability to sit down and rig stuff up and see if it works. Most of the time, we're under the gun, getting pressured into getting stuff done as fast as possible. Fast. Everyone wants production, right? Normally, if you're going at 100 miles an hour, you don't necessarily have the luxury of sitting down and going, let me rig this up on a board and see if it works.
Yeah, they're definitely, you have to plan for that step.
Oh, yeah, for
And
sure.
I think, a lighting designer would be wise to advise the client on that, just give them, having that extra time in between install and design to make sure that everything is gonna work properly.
I think this kind of goes back to procurement. I love owning my lighting package. And I know sometimes lighting designers are like, oh, those electrical contractors, they're making my light fixtures so expensive, which is not the case. Usually we're like barely like smoothing by on it. But when it comes to it, if we're the people installing it, we're the people that are in the field installing it, looking at it, reviewing it, and everything is linear also these days. So everything needs to have like custom cuts sometimes, all these jumpers and accessories. So the further away the purchasing is from me, the more questions I have, and it's harder to get the answers. So when the package is closer to me and I own all of that, then I can make those decisions and go straight back and get those answers and stuff like that. So I think procurement is something that really needs to be discussed, because depending on when that starts, if it starts after 100% CD set way into like building, which sometimes happens, and you have to go through a couple of people to get the answers, sometimes you're not going to get those answers. And sometimes by the time it's delivered and it's the wrong thing, it's too late at that point, and then you make good with what you have. So because they're telling you you need to be on the 20th floor and you're only on the 15th. So if it's a high rise, they're not going to stop for you. And the sheetrock's going up, so.
So you feel more comfortable and able to make decisions about drivers and systems when it's your
Yes,
package, right?
absolutely.
Is it about, so I mean, I guess there's a point where as we get technology and this is sort of transitioning to the next question, as we get technology that's more complicated, deadlines that are, project sort of deadlines that are faster, budgets that are lower, all of these things cause more problems. We want to have, and we have people who are more and more sort of specialized in little sort of niche areas. We're trying to cut out middlemen, but then also trying to make sure that there's all these different people that can cover each part of the process, which is why we have this panel up right now. That is a convoluted segue. In the last 5 years, with all this sort of changes in technologies, we can't make any assumptions about technology anymore.
Yeah,
All the
that's-
things that everybody in this room knew about output of, a linear fluorescent fixture, or output of, the standard sort of light sources that we had, the standard transformers, that's all gone. Now it's sort of a case-by-case basis. So I guess that the last 5 years, what's been the biggest difference in the type of equipment that you're either installing or purchasing? What are some of the surprises that you guys have found?
One that I like is the wireless switches. That makes life a lot easier, because it's something that an electrician in the field can easily install without having to program. It's easy. A lot of them just like pop in. They don't even have wires going to them. So I think that's a good one. And also, since a lot of this is wireless, remembering that you need 120 volt sometimes to a hub to send out kind of like the router information. That's something that, we're getting used to, trying to find places to put those, and how many feet that they can spread, how many you need for like apartments and stuff like that, so.
So additional components, things that were not normally part of the equipment prior.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot to do with wireless.
I'd say like the lighting design has shifted a little bit from just a few cans of incandescent lights to many different loads of LEDs with strip lights and under counter and spots and very, very specific LED lighting. So, you have, then the control system really becomes more desirable for the client than having a whole switch bank on the wall. And I don't know, for our company, I'd say, like, the pitch is kind of flipped from being a very complicated system that's all about the technology behind it and the plethora of things that you can do, to making that environment as simple to use as possible. So, you know, instead of a whole multi-level 80s touchscreen control system that's kind of hard to dig through, a lot of the controls that we're installing is just one simple switch that's kind of a modern industrial look, or something that's kind of going back to the 20s or the 30s. Instead of, you know, exposing the technology on the surface, it's kind of hidden in the background, and it, you know, kind of makes this more advanced system easier to operate.
So that somehow the changes in technology have allowed us to create sort of more multi-layered.
Yeah, it's almost like people are
designs
having
or-
an aversion to technology now, and like overloads, so they're really excited to just have this very simple, you know, on, dim, off, maybe another scene, and we can achieve that with some controls. I actually brought some because I think they're so cool. This is a company called Meljack that can be put onto a Lutron system using contact closures. So, you know, it's not like very pretty, yeah. And Lutron has even come out with some controls that are much more simplified, just 4 buttons on this one, maybe 3 with the raise lower. So
it's definitely shifting from,
yeah, I think people used to want a control system that could have super discrete control, and now it's more, okay, I want a beautiful environment that's like my 90% use case, and then a few different scenes, and all of that, of course, is adjustable on the back end. And we do that, and that's actually a step that I'd love to do more with the lighting designer, because they kind of had that in mind when they were designing the lights, and then I'm the one who's choosing the dimming levels. So it's very rare that I have someone come into the finished project and really tone that with me, but definitely the client does. So yeah.
I mean, we've seen, number one, right out of the gate, I think the biggest difference from 5 years ago to now is the quality of the diodes themselves. The early diodes suffered from decay a lot, which was like the dirty little secret, right? You put it in, it'll save you a lot of money, it's great, and then like 5 years down the road, wow, why is this not as bright? So I think the latest chipsets and the latest diodes now are superior in quality compared to what was out 5 years ago. And to kind of echo what, you know, she was saying, is like, this stuff is definitely, this is cutting edge. This is why I kind of make the comparison, and people think I'm crazy when I say like the lighting design and control world for me runs in parallel in technological advancements with the medical field. It's every day something comes out. You know, Lutron with their button, scene programming. It's just a button, you hit it, you know, it's this scene for the living room. So it's just like it's a dumb smart button. You know, that's what it is. It's a dumb smart button. I want it to do that, that's what it says. But the infrastructure to get that done lies in a control panel, in an electrical closet, in some remote part of the building. And I think that's the biggest difference I've seen in the field every day. So that's what I've seen.
Okay, we talked about this. So, what's the biggest disconnect between what we say or what we draw and what we actually mean?
I'd like to plead the fifth.
I mean, we know that we're at fault for a lot of things. That's part of why we want to have this conversation.
Not me.
Okay, I'll say that. So what is it that we say, we're like, we want the lights to do this, we want them to look like this, but we don't actually communicate that.
I hate lumen plans with a passion. We were involved in a project a little while ago, remodeling a shoe store. And lighting designer had made the design for the shoe store, and the gentleman had a lot of perimeter lighting. The walls looked beautiful. It's great. Merchandise looked awesome. Except the ceiling was like 30 feet high, and he had planned for regular compact fluorescent recess lights. And, you know,
Today?
this was only about like 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
So, so we turn everything on. The owner has a conniption fit because the center of the store is pretty much pitch black. So, lighting designers' ultimate defense was, well, my lumen readouts are, I don't know why we're not getting this. I don't know why you're not getting it either. You specified the light, you know, it was drawn here, I mounted it. Did you check your lamping? Did you check your lensing? Maybe did you wipe off the meter to make sure that, you know, it's not dirty? I just hate the blame game. When people make mistakes all the time. I'm the type of guy, if I make a mistake, I'm the first guy to raise my hand and own it. I did it, I'll fix it, sorry, you know? But I just wish that when contractors, lighting designers, this is more of a blanket statement, just own what you do. If you make a mistake and you spec something out wrong, don't defend yourself by sticking to the light readout on the blueprint that you drew. If the light's not there, it's not there. Just let's figure out a way how we can fix it. And a lot of times, I see a lot of people, they trade practicality for design. You know, it's gonna look beautiful. Yeah, but it's a light. It's gotta also work.
I guess for us, we have some fixtures that are spec'd later in the process. Often these decorative fixtures, TBD. Yeah, despite the conversations that I have about why it's so important to check all these different things on all of the, you know, things that have been established in the project so far, it almost doesn't translate to the decorative fixtures. And yeah, I guess a lot of lighting designers think it's going to just be an incandescent or a halogen, some sort of pretty chandelier thing. But now there's so many cool LED decorative fixtures that, like, really the sooner those can be spec'd, the better. But our approach now is to kind of just plan for everything. So we wire for 3 wires, 0 to 10, you know, like whatever we might need, and make sure that there's room for, you know, a possible driver. We came across a situation where the wire run was too long for the fixture that they wanted to put in there, not to mention it was 0 to 10, and we didn't have any communication wires. So, I mean, the answer is no, you can't have that fixture, but nobody wants to hear that, you know. So yeah, the decorative fixture, that's something that if you guys could be a little more clear on, that would be helpful.
I agree. Also, I feel like that's something that like halfway through the interior designer is like, whoa, I'm going this totally different route. And then like the mounting heights are all different and it totally, completely changes everything.
Oh, now we gotta use remote drivers.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, where are you gonna put those?
Thanks.
The one thing I think is that the lighting designers, sometimes, I really don't know if you guys know how much the packages actually cost. I really don't think you do. Because you were like, oh, it's them. Like, they gave me this DNet price. I know that this is what the markup is. And then when it comes down to the bidding and when it gets like dirty and they're like figuring out and like sometimes the developers just like throw up their hands and they come to me and they're like, Caroline, like, why did they tell me that this was going to be $1.5 million? Why is it 3.8? I don't get it. And then you fight it down, and then sometimes they just get so fed up that the lighting designer is like, I mean, they didn't mean to maybe, but like they gave them this like awesome design, and it actually ended up not being in budget. Maybe it was even for construction reasons, how to design the construction to make this lighting work. But they get fed up a lot, and then sometimes when that happens, they don't even want to go to them with to get a VE package done because they're like, I already gave them all my money to do this, and they came in way over budget, and then they'll ask other people to value engineer it, and then they just completely go silent on you. You guys will go silent and don't want to get back, and then they'll like put all these notes in there being like, this isn't like the same spec, but then the owner comes back to us and is like, well, I'm not going with their package and I'm done using them and just figure it out from here. So really keep your budget in mind, really, really know what the end price is going to be. And if a VE comes up, like be willing to work on that, because I feel like a lot of times, even when I used to be on the lighting design side for 6 years, I would get so stubborn about it, but at the end, the client, it's their pocket. So be more flexible.
You'd be surprised how many times VE actually leads to getting the work. You know, I've gotten jobs only because I decided to sit down and value engineer something, and like she said, most other people are like, ah man, I spent already a month looking at this. I gave you a price. I'm not going to sit down and break this down again. All right. I mean, if you got the money and you don't need the work, great. But I'll never turn down an opportunity just because I can just sit down and plan some other way around something to make somebody happy. I mean, it's frustrating, sure, but at the end of the day, we all want to work, right? We all want to stay busy and make money. So you'd be surprised how many times value engineering actually leads to continuing on a project or even getting a project.
And we
before-
prefer the lighting designers to help with that, but sometimes I feel like they just throw up their hands and don't want to be involved, you know, when we bring things to the table, which, you know, I love feedback. If you see something, say something, but like, but sometimes they're just like, it's over. Like, I like put in my hours and
Right,
my
that
budget's
we're-
over. Exactly.
Our ego wants to hold on to our design and,
For good reason, it's beautiful design.
interesting.
Well, particularly when there's times where value engineering also leads to changes that relate to the technology and the controls.
100%.
And that sort of, things roll downhill, like that sort of impacts everybody in the chain.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then you have a ton of RFIs that sometimes aren't getting answered at that point, so
Right.
it's really, that's when it gets frustrating.
Okay.
So coordination early on, coordination including pricing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that starts to speak to a conversation which is a bigger conversation outside of this in terms of how we communicate about budgets and value engineering in the larger project process. But it does relate to then how this sort of cycle of communication to get a project from design to completion needs to have clarity in terms of, you know, that you're all working on the same page to try and get this done, which means that sometimes you're going to need to compromise without, you know, removing the design intent, but to be able to get things
I
complete.
think educating the owners is key for the lighting designers to do, so that the lighting designers and electricians are all happy and synced and don't have to change anything. It's really working with the developers.
So last question, on a positive note, how has the change in technology and light sources and specifically LEDs, since we're at LEDucation, how has it improved your work? How has it made things better?
Well, right out of the gate, I mean, you're able to supply a lot more lights with only one source of power. I mean, 13, 27 watts versus 100 watts, 65 watts. You know, this one house we're doing in Great Neck, it's got 1,200 recessed LED lights in there at 13 watts a shot. If those were all incandescent, you know, you'd have to size the service up accordingly, even though incandescent loads are linear and they don't distort the harmonics on the neutral, which is a different discussion for a different panel. But, you know, it's made it a lot easier on us by saving installation costs. So yeah, the price of the lights might be more, or the price of the technology behind the LED might be more, but you're actually saving money as well by having less copper run throughout the house. You can carry more light fixtures per home run, per dedicated circuit, you know, and that's trickled down all the way from the last branch circuit feeding, you know, the furthest light away, all the way down to the feeder conductors for the service. If you can get away with a smaller service and make the proper calculations, you're saving real money. Not to mention, you know, on your actual kilowatt usage per month too. You know, most of the biggest loads in any residence is the lighting load. They work for anywhere between, you know, 6 to 12 hours a day, depending on what time of year you're in, right? So I think that's the LED technology has kind of definitely driven that and improved our work in being able to get us to use less materials and actually perform the work quicker.
I I guess it's given me a job. Yeah, it makes our role very important that these technologies are moving along so quickly, and it's a lot for anyone to keep in mind when designing, electricians, even myself. I'm constantly learning new things, so definitely gives me a job. Also, as far as control systems go, it's really cool that like you can now control your music from your keypads, and just whole home control systems are now a part of these lighting systems. It's very integrated, and so for One Button, it's definitely advanced our business, and we're able to provide more product offerings.
I mean, I think it's made it harder. But I do think, this is more big picture. I mean, I think the ceiling heights, the plenum spaces are getting smaller because the technology is getting smaller. You're being, I used to always, the fixtures were 8-inch cavities, and now, we have these nice little like 3.5 to 4.5 inch. Most of the jobs that I do, I feel like the one thing though is that the technology, there's a couple great small housings, but there's not a ton out there, so the variety isn't there yet, but the ceilings are getting smaller and smaller, meaning they can throw on an extra floor on that building, get some more money out of it. So in that case, I think it's gotten better for the fact that things have gotten smaller, but I think it's actually just gotten to be a little bit more of a headache.
That's fair.
More money for the developer.
Well, I mean, I think for us just to throw in, I'm never going to say that LEDs are perfect in any ways, and everybody in this room knows that there's a fair amount of headaches that come with them, but the ability, I think, as Whitney, as you said, that there's sort of an increase in terms of how we can use that technology to build more integrated lighting, more integrated control systems, to be able to coordinate with more surfaces and spaces, and it's expanded in some
You
ways.
can really think about how people use their space and create a very, nice environment for someone to live in, so it's impressive.
Well, so turning from this sort of conversation at the panel, if you guys could look out, before we get to questions, if you guys could look out and just like say one thing to lighting designers or the architects, the clients, that would make your life easier, what would it be?
Give me more info.
Keep us in the loop. There's changes, that usually means we have to make changes, so.
Your foreman. Get your foreman's cell phone number. And maybe get him a coffee and meet him like once every 6 months at the job site. That's all you need. He is the best on the job.
Yeah, I think what I've taken away from this is we need to be available as the design team, that we need to answer emails and phone calls and be available to answer your questions, and that we can be strong advocates to our clients to improve and clarify the process and inform them as early on as possible what needs to happen in the CA phase, in terms of, like we were talking about, meetings and budgets and timelines and purchasing, and you may think you can save a little money buying it yourself, but here are all the problems that will happen and cost more money later, and just be more open in communicating that information.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of this is, stemming from an internal conversation, wanting to sort of sit down and talk about best practices from the lighting design perspective meant that we had to understand sort of where we take responsibility for things and what we don't, and some of the ways that, I'll say this for myself, I don't know if it's true for you as well, that just from sort of like a theater production background, this idea of you need to collaborate to get things done. Everybody has to be on the same team. And this disconnect between design and construction is a problem, particularly when you're talking about technology where there are no assumptions, that everything is new. and that's really the weaving together that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of checks and balances.
Yeah. Well, on that note, we'd like to open up for questions. We'll get started over here.
Yeah, just a quick question, a comment and a question. My name's Greg Berry. I'm with iLighting. We're manufacturer of luminaire, LED luminaires. On the installation question, okay? The frustration thing that we have from manufacturers, that most manufacturers actually stick the instruction sheets into the box. That, now we found out that 95% of them gets thrown away with the box. So the instruction sheets do get thrown away. But from a designer perspective, do you guys require also to have installation instructions that go along with the spec sheets as well, or would that be possible to help?
It would be great. I think very often we don't include them. I think there's a lot of, in terms of like past work that I've worked on as a designer, in the past I've assumed a lot, well, the EC will find it. Like the electrician will go to the website and learn how to install this fixture. But I think what I'm hearing today and in recent work is that, no, like we can be helpful. We can include that information. Hopefully it will be looked at, or like you were saying, ceiling height or cavity height is like a big question. So are there key pieces from the installation guides that we can note in our schedules or in our drawings, like important pieces to make sure that that stuff is seen? But I think as a manufacturer, yeah, like have everything available on your website. Like I want to be able to download everything.
You have to search for it really hard sometimes to find those instructions. It should be like the last page of the cut sheet, so you don't have to go to a separate link.
Dawn?
Hi, this has been really great. And speaking to the last person's question, we make custom lighting fixtures and restore historic lighting fixtures. And so they're oftentimes one of a kind. They can be big, they can be unconventional, oftentimes they are. A lot of times we're working with fixtures that come from Europe that were meant to hang in an entirely different system. So our job right off the bat is to figure out how are these going to become. And sometimes the last 10% of the job can require like 40% of the brain power, because we have to think about what are we giving to the electrical contractor? How is that person going to hang this fixture? So it's really, really important to us to, right from the get-go, to understand what box, which A box is up there, what hardware is up there, does it need support, mechanical support in the ceiling? A lot of our fixtures cannot hang off of a regular 4x4 junction box. So just speaking to that, as people that work on unconventional lights all the time, it's so important that right at the beginning we understand what's up in the ceiling and how we can give the appropriate hardware. So when it comes to you installing it, you know what to do and you have what you need.
Thank you.
Working with you.
Yep.
Rosa?
So I have a question more regarding the part when lighting designers start asking about pricing. I know that a lot of distributors get attacked by lighting designers or reps. And in my experience, at my firm, we would assume a markup, so that we can start getting an idea of what our cost of design is going to be. And when I worked at a firm, we would assume it was a total of about
I feel like it's two parts. So the bid for the electrical contract includes all of the installation and everything. The cut sheets are there when we go to bid on just the electrical contract. But when you're looking at, and I'm just speaking from like high-rise residential and mixed-use space, so like, and like New York, New Jersey, but when they go to you and say, I need unit prices turned around to me in 3 days' time, no one's gonna give it to you right away. So what I assume happens sometimes is sometimes you see what you think was the right markup, and if you see one number that's real low and real high, maybe on those, because like the developers literally want you to give them answers in 2 days. So maybe that person like had like 75% of the answers. They might have taken what the budget was and then did some like math just to make sure that it was working at that point, to be honest, because the turnaround time when it's like 3 days and no one's giving you answers is, it might just been a placeholder, but incorporated into the whole package price. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
I mean, I can understand that sometimes private sectors will say, we need an answer tomorrow, and I know that can put a lot of pressure. And for us, one that was very sensitive to time was like the famous integrated handwriting. Like, there's no, like a straight handwriting, integrated handwriting is like more simple. But when you start having curves and all that, it gets more complicated. We try to get a price, see if we can afford it, but then the manufacturer says, well, to have detailed drawings, I can't give you any
So,
type
Right.
of.
one,
So it's hard.
absolutely, and I think there's one sort of, the pricing and sort of how that works, and pricing and lighting and purchasing and procurement, I think relates to this in terms of how we then specify and how we put together projects. I think the idea of being able to resolve that is another panel.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother conference.
But I do appreciate the fact that that's a thing that we need to, as much as possible, have conversations about, just in
Well,
terms of getting things done quickly.
Right, when up here, we're getting asked to specify packages that are more in line with a reasonable budget, but then on our side, we're like, but we can't get a budget, like, we can't
Yeah.
get the right information.
So that's also on the side of trying to have those conversations, not just about the technology with our clients, but then also in terms of trying to get a clear idea of what they're willing to spend on lighting.
Do you find that you have more success if you sign a contract on a job, like, before final bid documents? Like, sometimes clients will hire a contractor during the CD phase. Do you find that it's a smoother, more successful process rather than coming in at the end and competing for a finished bid?
I've never been on a job or gotten a job that was 100% all intact. It's up to, and this kind of goes for all of us, because we all kind of work under contract, or, we all work for somebody at some point, right? I think it would behoove everyone to make sure that you qualify if you're going in with a placeholder, right? The biggest thing isn't, what I found not recently, but more and more as the speed and the development and these buildings go up and people want stuff done, I think it's more important what you're excluding on your bid, on your contract, than what you're including. Because when you qualify it and you're saying, listen, you want this in 1 day, you want an answer on this, I'll give you an answer on it. But I'm gonna give you a placeholder at $150 a light fixture, and I don't care if it comes in at 30 bucks. That's the price you're gonna have to pay for an answer today. Everything costs something in life, If you want an answer today, here's my answer, today. It's $150 a light fixture. Might be 30, hooray for me if it is, But that's gonna be my placeholder, it's $150. Light fixture not to exceed, So I think we're kind of at the point where, like, to get back to what kind of more directly what you said, I don't think I've ever locked down a project, whether it was a huge house or a 10-story that we just closed a deal on in Soho. I don't think I've ever locked down a contract where like every little detail down to the screw was like on paper and drawn out. So I think it's just the nature of the beast, which is why we all need to do our due diligence and express to the people that are hiring us for our service, like, listen, I'm gonna give you X, Y, and Z, right? That's the standard contract or proposal, is I'm gonna give you this, but I'm also not gonna give you this and this number. And I think that I'm not gonna give you part has become more important than the, I'm gonna give you that part, you know?
Yeah, I agree, because I've been in situations recently where, where they just, I feel like the general contractor so many times, they get so frustrated with these lighting packages. They literally, like, I just had a guy on the phone, we closed something, he's like, I don't want to hear from you again until this is like done. He was like, unless there's something comes up there's a change, he's like, I don't want to hear from you. I just want to know that everything is included in this package. So if anything is not included, tell me now. And then everything else, I just want you to take it off my plate completely. So, you know, if you're giving them a budget and you get to that price that they are happy with, and it's just like they want to wash their hands of it and have you take complete control. So that goes back to like what you were saying, that there's a few items that sometimes need to be negotiated and you don't know because they are literally like, well, I'm on the phone with X, Y, and Z and we need an answer in an hour. So.
Kyle?
To what extent and what particular manner does the panel interface or bring into the discussion the electrical engineer with the lighting designer to address load type issues or control coordination items? Because I think that seems to be another part of the discussion that I'd just like to, you know.
Sorry, at what point in the project, like
Or
overall?
To what extent do you involve the electrical engineer?
Kind of the whole time. But really from the beginning, I mean, we want to be involved from the initiation of design. And if I can even get ahead of the lighting designer picking out specs, I can kind of guide them towards better solutions. But yeah, we have project managers on site that really double check that the electrician understands our electrician's report, which is generated from the controls system, our RCP that has special wiring types marked up. You know, we were talking earlier about how it's sometimes even hard for an electrician to grasp that all of these loads run back to a panel. So just getting ahead of that and kind of feeling out, you know, who is this electrician, what has he worked on before, or she. So, yeah, and explaining how the system works and making sure that they're taking, you know, care to follow the instructions the way we've really clearly outlined them, so.
But I think you were saying where does the electrical engineer fit into this process?
100% CD is where usually that's when my project engineers will go to the meetings, whether at the site or at a field office, but they'll sit down basically at 100% CD because by that point, all the trades have been, their bids are complete and we're on the job. And at that point, it's usually 100% CD and then it lasts about 3 weeks to like 4 weeks at 100% CD, after 100%. So that's typically where the coordination happens, but it would be nice if it came a little earlier. I mean, I know that's hard to say 'cause if it's not 100% then, but like you were saying, it's never 100%.
Never,
So
never,
it'd be kind
ever.
of nice if it was a little bit earlier.
I think in the way I look at things, maybe I'm wrong, but I wish that the electrical engineers would be more involved
Yeah.
with the lighting loads, because we all know that, you know, an LED by itself is a diode, so it's non-ohmic, right? There's non-ohmic resistance with an LED, so there's nothing there. But the driver is a nonlinear load, so it causes harmonics and it causes imbalance on three-phase Y-connected systems. So if you're putting up a high-rise and you have 5,000 light fixtures that have 5,000 different drivers, I'm not saying you're going to need to run the service neutral 10 sizes bigger, but I wish you could sit down and do the calculations and figure it out. I mean, I've dealt with great electrical engineers. I've dealt with not some great electrical engineers. And I think that's why in modern buildings now, especially with, you know, laptops, computers, LED, basically everything we have connected to electrical systems today is nonlinear. So it causes some form of distortion on the electrical system and the electrical service. And it's all additive. It all trickles down to the point of entrance. So that's why I think in a lot of buildings today, you see, services run with super neutrals. You have a lot of isolated grounds where you didn't see that years ago, because years ago, incandescent lighting works at almost a near unity power factor because it's purely resistive, right? It has no harmonics to it, not electronic. So I think what I'd like to see is a lot more involvement with the electrical engineering on the calculated and computed lighting loads and then their effect on the service.
Yeah, I think that's, on the design side, is that we understand that there's coordination that happens between the lighting designer and the electrical engineer on the design side, but it does sometimes happen in sort of documents just getting handed over, incorporated into drawing sets, and then passed on, as opposed to needing more of that coordination and then calculations from that.
Yeah, because you'll see on the panel schedules, they'll say, panel circuit 2, lighting loads not to exceed 1200 volt amperes, but 1200 volt amperes how?
Yeah, so there's missing information.
Well, and bad on us for not having an electrical engineer on this panel. That says a lot, doesn't it?
So, unfortunately, we have time for one more question. I think that at least we can stick around shortly and then have you guys talk afterwards, but we may need to release the room. So,
I'm in the MEP engineering team and I do electrical design. And the max that I am involved with is still the building department comments for the CD set. And we don't even do the lighting design or selection of the lights. It's sometimes the client or like the architect does it for us. Yeah, and then we calculate all the loads and panels, schedules.
I agree with you 100%, and what I'm saying to you is I wish that lighting was looked at more than just as a design element. It's cool if it looks good, but it has to serve a function too, right? That's why we're paying the money to put this stuff in and get it designed and getting state-of-the-art. I just wish that, we're all basically on the same team. Like, our relationship with each other is almost technically a little bit more important than our individual relationships with the developer. At the end of the day, yeah, they cut the checks, which is the reason why we're there doing our work and getting stuff done. But if we can't lean on each other and we don't derive information from each other, then, the project's gonna be so much more difficult, especially when you're putting up a multi-unit high-rise in New York City. Con Edison's talking about now in New York City starting to charge for power factor correction, which I know they've been talking about for a while, but if your power factor in your building starts really stinking because you're not balancing all the loads and you have all these harmonics and Con Ed's got to come in and correct the power factor to the building, they're talking about charging you for that correction on top of the kilowatt hour usage, right? So I think it all starts with, it's art and science. The LED lighting is art and science. The science part is you, the art part is you guys, and we're the hands that put the stuff up on the canvas, the media, that paint the medium. So I just wish there was a lot more team involved, not just, I'm the engineer and I stop at the CD sets, I'm done.
As I say, on that note, I think that's for us is the biggest sort of need for this communication and this coordination. So we have to end. I just want, before you all leave, thank you. We just wanted to thank our panelists again, Dave Zecchi from Lion Electric, Whitney Wirtz from One Button, and Carolyn Harrison from Top Shelf Electric. Thank you guys very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
I know.
That is good to know. Next year, do you have a card? 'Cause next year we'll call you.